quite a few people don't necessarily realize is that being homeless is a process of accelerated aging and dying. So all 4 seasons are hazardous to one's safety and health when one is homeless. When the mind is stressed, the body suffers greatly. When the body is stressed, the mind suffers. And when both the mind and body are stressed, one's mental and physical health deteriorates rapidly. And being homeless is dangerous, it's very scary, it's degrading. There is an almost total lack of safety, and being homeless itself becomes a full-time job. I lived in the woods. I lived by myself. I did not stay in shelters. I lived in the woods, not on the downtown streets. When I was living in the woods, a 250-pound, 6.2 criminal felon with a criminal record in 7 states attempted to kill me. I managed to get away. I called the police. The police came in force. When they realized I was homeless, they shrugged their heads, scratched their heads, and said, "Homeless on homeless crime. I mean, why did you call us?" So it's very difficult to get proper help from the police.
Well, first of all, for me to become homeless, it was a road of a lot of domestic violence. And it was also a very strong learning point in my life. But the domestic violence, I had to escape. I was going to end up dead if I didn't. And so I ended up escaping, and the only way I could stay away from him was to put myself homeless. Once I became homeless, I started staying in an abandoned house, or actually it was a house up for sale, because it did have heat, thank goodness. And we're in the dead of winter because it was Christmas Eve time, and that's when I finally made the final break, was Christmas Eve. But we got arrested 2 times out of the abandoned houses for, well, the first time I got arrested, we were hollered at. We came downstairs from the room we were staying in, and when we walked out of this completely stripped out house, the wiring had been taken out, the bathtub, the toilet, everything was gone in this house. They had been called in for a burglary. Well, there was nothing for us to steal. But as we came walking out of the house, I happened to look down, and I had a red dot on my chest. And I looked out in the little field that was around, and there were about 5 shooters out in the field ready to take aim and fire it at us at any time. And when you're homeless, even though we were working almost full time at that point, both of us, you don't ever have the money to get ahead, to pay for your rent, especially the first and last and pet deposit or whatever it is. You just can't ever seem to come up with enough money to get ahead. Of course, after you're on the streets for so long, nobody wants you anywhere. You become nothing and no one cares. And in fact, I remember telling my kids, "Oh, if you don't look at the homeless, they're not there." Boy, was I wrong. The homeless are not invisible. They are people.
We were residing under a bridge and we built a community under Morrison Bridge on NATO Parkway. And it was the worst bridge. It was the middle ground for the other bridges where people would meet to score drugs and try to hurt people. We resided under that bridge and made it a clean and sober bridge where people could approach us. We were more approachable. We helped the people get along, learn respect for themselves and for others, gathered resources for the other bridges that didn't have access. During that time, a lot of people were harmed, so we didn't want to leave them until the sweeps started happening. The sweeps were happening at all the other camps, and the police and the Clean and Safe and even the city came out to speak with us, and were asking us, getting our advice on the T1 building that was supposed to go up, and the Wapato jail, and some other tent village. We let them know that if they put too many people in one space, that it would be chaotic without enough staffing. They did not wish to sweep us, but we had to ultimately leave. The signs were posted. So everyone was relocated. My husband and I moved to Hazelnut Grove.
Yeah, so homelessness was definitely not a choice. It was something I never saw in my future, something my family never saw for my future. I was always a straight A student, academic scholarship right out of high school, homeowner by the age of 27. Like, life was really good. I started going to Ray when I got married and just started making poor choices, getting involved with crime, and started drinking pretty heavily. The relationship turned abusive. I had a warrant out for my arrest, and so me and my partner became homeless together. And we were pretty much up and down the West Coast, California, Nevada, Washington, just on a crime spree, just trying to get money and make ends meet. Sometimes we'd have enough money for a hotel. Sometimes we'd be sleeping in the bushes. Sometimes we'd be sleeping in a park on a playground structure, just wherever we could get shelter. I really isolated from my family at that time. I was embarrassed about what was happening to me and the abuse that I suffered, because everyone always saw me as this strong person and a strong woman who wouldn't let the things that were happening to me ever happen to me. And so things got to a place where he went away to prison, and I eventually found myself in prison. When I was out there, I felt like I was just a shell of a person trying to function in a world where it felt like nobody cared about me at all, right? Like, I didn't matter. Even if I would say hello to someone walking on the street, they would just ignore me. And it does start to have that effect on your mental, and like, okay, maybe this is my fate. Maybe I'm not worth anything. Maybe I'm not gonna ever amount to anything or be able to accomplish any goals. And so breaking the silence and sharing my story about a lot of the horrific things that happened to me as far as domestic violence and Melissa, just that loss of hope, hopelessness, that sense, that deep thread and sense of hopelessness that you feel when you're out there, reminded me of how just compassion and empathy goes so far, when you're interacting with people who are living on the streets. They don't necessarily need anything from you. Sometimes they just want you to hear them, but even just saying, hello, how are you doing? I hope you have a good day, can have such a huge impact on that person's day. You have no idea. You might be giving somebody the will to go on just for one more day.
Is there something that you really want the general public to understand about the challenges of homelessness specifically?
Challenges they face, it's very difficult meeting their basic needs. Whereas you can use the bathroom really quickly in your homes, it takes a person that's houseless hours to get to that bathroom if they are allowed to get into the bathroom. Businesses won't allow homeless people in with their belongings. They have to be able to purchase something which they may not have money for. It's very difficult, and they travel very far to find a bathroom when the loos are locked. And it's just very heartbreaking, because these are people, like we said, are lacking in so much, especially sleep. And if they're running around with all their belongings to get just to a bathroom, and then running around to stand in those hour lines to get a meal or the shower, that will take a couple more hours till you get that. These people are very resilient. If anybody wants to add labels to these people besides lazy and bums, they should add better labels, like warriors, survivors, minimalist. Add better labels if you want to add any labels at all.
And, they're having to make real choices every day. I know a lot of times we're saying, hey, just provide more services and they can just get there. Well, when you're homeless, if my appointment with my case manager or whoever is at 12:30 and the meal center is serving food at 12:30, I have to decide what's most important for me that day. Do I eat today, or do I go meet with my case manager?
What was the occurrence that made you want to change?
I became involved with Sisters of the Road, and I still had no intentions on getting housing myself. But what I discovered at Sisters of the Road was there was work to be done. One thing that I did learn, and I have learned, is it's a lot more difficult to find housing and to leave the world of homelessness than it appears.
So after our last bout in jail, Scott had heard about Dignity Village. So we went out to Dignity Village and got on the waiting list. So anyway, we ended up out at Dignity Village, and we had said 6 months, get in, get on our feet, and get out. Don't get involved. Well, that was 8 years ago. Within 6 months, I became security coordinator, which is one of their lead positions. And I'd gone from nothing now to maybe somebody. And throughout the years, I became the treasurer and the vice chair and chairperson for 2.5 years. I'm now back to security coordinator, and my husband has taken over the chair position. But the village is a huge thing in my life. It has gotten both of us involved in community, and I am now a firm believer in living in community. If we move out of the village, I'm almost hoping to find some communal type place to go and stay.
My husband and I moved to Hazelnut Grove. Challenges there that I walked into where there was no communication at the time with the Overlook Neighborhood Association, because there was a lawsuit filed by the Overlook Neighborhood Association to the city. So they stopped communicating. I started going with some members to the meetings, and during one of the meetings, there was a change that was, they were trying to change the bylaws to where it excluded the voices of the houseless community to be able to use their voices in the meetings. That was quickly swept. They were told that they could not do that. After this happened, there was they were doing nominations for the new board members, doing their annual. So several of us agreed to go and put our names on the ballot and got to speak a few minutes to tell the neighborhood about ourselves, and they elected me. There was recently on the board an agenda item which was he was trying to revise the bylaws again. So a couple of us volunteered for that committee, and I'm on that committee as well. We developed a houseless outreach committee as well, and we'll be having our third meeting on the 22nd. And it's awesome, really. We get to talk about ideas and gather resources and see how we can reach people that don't want to be involved and include them in conversations and community and just show them that we care. Because if you show a little bit of empathy and compassion to these people, they will blossom. Because they've lost hope. And that's one of the challenges, is trying to push that effort of love forward in developing community, whether you're under a bridge, in a camp, or in a regular neighborhood with houses. Everybody included. They're trying to bridge that gap on the separation that we see in our city.
When I realized you got to figure something out and do something different with your life. Like, this is not working. It's time for you to take some accountability for your situation. And so by the time I did complete my prison sentence that July, I found myself at Transition Projects. Just to the point where it was like, you know what, I'm going to swallow my pride. That's something I've never done before, and I'm just going to go for broke and just tell them the truth. Like, I'm not going to lie for a change in my life and see where that gets me, because I had basically tried everything else. And the people there made me feel like I was a person again. I didn't feel judged. I felt supported, and I felt like they got me, as a human being. And so through their assistance and through their help, I was able to finally get back into stable housing, get custody of my children back. I went back to school and became a certified alcohol and drug counselor. Then went to Portland State and got my bachelor's in social work. While I was working on my bachelor's, I did my internship at Transition Projects and got my first social services job there after doing my internship. And so I've been able to pretty much thrive ever since. While I was at Transition Projects, I participated in a pilot project that they had, which was their mentor program, which was basically folks who had, addressed their homelessness and been successful coming back to help those along the way so they can do the same thing. And so that's where I find myself today, managing that very same program that really was foundational and a pillar in me having it together today, which I look back and I'm just in awe and amazed.
If you were on a commission that had to decide how to spend $10 million to address homelessness, how would you spend it? Damien?
Build housing. All $10 million of it.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
$10 million is going to get maybe one building. Maybe. And that might house 200 tops. I would say take that 10 million and build villages. Villages it costs about $2,000 per unit. Now we have no electricity and no running water to each unit, but we are trying to put solar in all of our places. But we do have communal shower, communal sink, so we have what we need. But I can't remember what the numbers were, but it's a huge amount of money per square foot in an apartment complex, where $10 million would go a long way to put in a village or several villages.
May I comment as well? If communities would adopt a camp, say how many people you'd like to see in that camp, even probably possibly beautify that space and care for that space. Also, we would need a little bit of green area to build a garden so that you can have food that will sustain that village as well, and possibly the neighborhood. That could even possibly build jobs, like with people like food by design.
You can see the issues of homelessness is very nuanced and complex. So even if we do give people housing, people struggle sometimes once they are in that housing because they've been on the streets for so long, and it can be hard for them to reintegrate into even being indoors. So with that needs to become support services after they are housed. So whether that is alcohol and drug counseling, whether that is helping them reacclimate to the community or getting to know their community that they're a part of now, I think it's important for them to be healthy. It's really an adjustment to go back into housing and go back into a society that was ostracizing you and never wanted anything to do with you in the first place. And now I'm expected to interact into what is considered normal for society. So I think that's a huge piece, not just the affordable housing, but making sure those supportive services are available for them afterwards as well.
Homelessness and houselessness is not going to go away. It will never be completely solved. And I believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think that the thing that bothers me most are that there are so many misperceptions about what houseless people are, who they are. Houseless people, when it boils down to it, are just regular people who just happen to not have housing.